let's talk about some of the action from this past weekend, Justin. As we say, not a huge amount of action compared to the usual Sunday, but we still had a fair bit. And we'll start off with Sheffield United, who are back second in the table after a 2-1 win over Portsmouth. 3-word reviews for Sheffield United. Ian says, poor but won. Tom says, how'd we win? For Portsmouth, Scott says, win will come. Jeff says, absolutely effing robbed. Now, for those who haven't seen this game, it may sound like it was a routine win for Chris Wilder's boys, but you could not be more wrong. How on earth have Sheffield United won this game, Justin?
Yeah, this was the banker of the weekend. It genuinely was. Going into the weekend, I was so convinced this would be a comfortable 3-0 win for Sheffield United. In the back of my mind, no question about it. No question about it. This would be a clean sheet. And an easy stroll in the park. But my God, Portsmouth deserve a hell of a lot of credit, but also a lot of criticism for Sheffield United. Despite them winning, yes, we can say you've taken away 3 points and you've won while not playing well. But the amount of chances Portsmouth created in this game, good grief. I don't know how they didn't come away with anything. Shocking. I don't know what's worse, losing and getting battered, or losing knowing you should have won the game, especially when you're fighting relegation. Those wins are much more important. So what's a worse feeling there for fans? It's a hard one.
I'd say getting battered, because at least you can take some encouragement from a good performance where you still lost, and don't underestimate it at all. Portsmouth will be absolutely kicking themselves for not getting something from this game. It was astonishing. They missed 2 open goals, hit the bar, and had 16 shots to Sheffield United's 11. A genuinely mad game where one team was much the better side, and I don't think anyone expected it to be Portsmouth in this one. And so I think despite losing, they will take encouragement from it, particularly with how woeful they have been on the road recently, haven't they? But for Sheffield United, Justin, it is back-to-back wins. However, I'm coming out of this concerned, which is, I think I'm as concerned as you can be with back-to-back wins, because this is 3 games in a row now where I think Sheffield United have been poor. Of course, the first one was that thumping at home to Hull. They won away at Derby and didn't offer a whole lot, considering they're facing a side who had lost 7 in a row. And now in this game, they're second best to Portsmouth, who have been shocking on the road this season. Keep in mind, by the way, all those teams are in the bottom 5. So with that being said, they have been seriously off it, haven't they? And well, you can say, yeah, they're still winning, though. They have been undeniably poor. And Chris Wilder even admitted so after the game, didn't he, Justin?
Yeah, he did. He said some quite stark things, really. That was the concerning thing. I think he spoke of this game individually as it possibly being arrogance, which is interesting because that's not something you ever associate with his teams. You know, they're very hardworking, they're very gritty, they're very determined. So yeah, arrogance seeping into this Blade side at this time of the season is a worry if that is the case. So I think there's a reality check probably coming in from Chris Wilder because, as I say, it's not something you really associate with his teams. But yeah, the performances that they have put in, I think they're quite fortunate. I know they got punished against Hull, so take that one out. But when you've come up against 3 relegation-threatened teams in a row in Hull, Derby and Portsmouth, have been second best. Probably not second best against Derby, but they weren't great. But not getting out of first gear in each of those games. That's the real concern because, yes, it's a busy old week of footballing games, but at the same time, this is a time of season where you've got to roll your sleeves up and really fight for it. But you look at Portsmouth in this game; they were scrappy. They were first to the first balls, first to the second balls. They felt like they wanted it more. And when it's that sort of performance, that's a worry. That can be a long-term thing. I don't think it will be, because I think if you look at the Gus Hamer goal and how beautifully the Sheffield United cut through Portsmouth in 4 or 5 passes, there's a nice spark of what they can do when they're on it. But yeah, when you're giving opposition this many chances, they're very lucky that they've come against quote unquote poor teams. I'm not going to say they're poor, but compared to Sheffield United, they should be wiping the floor with them.
Well, they're weaker teams, aren't they? That's undeniable that they're some of the weaker teams in the division, because that's where they are in the table. And while you are right, we've seen on plenty of occasions this season what Sheffield United can do, because, I mean, they're second for a reason. They have been, at points this season, the best team in the league. And they've got loads of individual quality. We all know that. But this drop-off, in quotation marks, has been pretty surprising. And Sheffield United fans are saying it as well. They're not daft. They can see that their team haven't been playing very well. There was a moment in the game against Portsmouth, actually, where Portsmouth missed an open goal through Conor Ogilvie, and you could hear the Sheffield United fans were unhappy with their team. The concern was audible. And if you just have a quick browse on social media, fans will admit that they're not at their best right now. I don't know why this is, though, Justin. Maybe it's simply down to Chris Wilder figuring out his best team or trying to bed in the new players. I don't know, but there needs to be a serious improvement, doesn't there? Because they've got Middlesbrough midweek and then that huge game with Leeds at the end of the month. Because if they don't improve, the other sides in the top two race will take advantage of it, won't they? And they can't afford to slip up.
Well, this is the thing. They can be punished by teams that have a little bit more quality about them. That's what I was sort of saying.
They wouldn't have won. They wouldn't have got as many points in this 3-game run if they were playing teams higher than the ones that they played, would they?
Well, yeah. When you're looking at the next few fixtures, you've got Borough in midweek, as you said. That you've given the Middlesbrough those chances. They're more likely to punish you. Luton away from home with new players again. That could be a sticky fixture. You've got QPR as well after that Leeds game at Loftus Road, who look unbeatable at the moment at home. The sides are coming up against over the next few weeks up until the start of March. They're teams that will punish you. No disrespect to Portsmouth and Derby. Hull showed those sides what they need to do to beat Sheffield United. They need to take their chances. They need to hit them on the break and be quick, and really show that they want the game more. And I think Derby didn't really do that. Portsmouth did that, but lacked that quality in front of goal. And unfortunately, when you come up against the teams like Middlesbrough, like the Leeds, like the QPRs, who are in a good vein of form or have been or have recruited extensively, etc., they're going to get punished. So there has to be a serious attitude change for Sheffield United because they're in such a good position. You cannot throw it away just because they've taken the foot off the gas. That would be criminal, absolutely criminal if that's the case.
Just 1 point in 4 games now for Portsmouth. But it is strange with them, isn't it, Justin? Because, as we have said, they definitely deserve something from this game. And then the game before that, they got a point against Burnley. So, despite just 1 point in 4 games, I'm actually feeling pretty positive about them. Obviously, they need to be better in front of goal, like they weren't against Sheffield United or against Burnley, for that matter, because they had a fair few chances in that one. But if they keep playing like this, these performances will surely see them stay up, won't they?
Yeah, you'd hope so. I mean, you say performances like this, but they didn't take the chances. And that could be a recurring theme for Portsmouth because they just lack that quality that other teams have around them.
Fine. Okay. If they play like that, bar the final touch, yes, they will stay up, won't they?
That's just me picking fault with what you're saying. But you are right. You are absolutely right. If you go back to that last away game against West Brom, it was a disaster, wasn't it? It was so poor. It was so open, and West Brom really punished them. This was a really good reaction. I know they've lost against Millwall at home in the following game, and obviously drew against Burnley, which is a great result thereafter. But this was a real, I think. I wouldn't say a turning point for Portsmouth because they need to get the result. But if you're looking at good performances away from home, this is the benchmark that Portsmouth need to strive for. They didn't shirk the challenge that was ahead of them. This could have been a similar game to that West Brom one, that West Brom defeat. But this was such a gear change. They didn't hide. Their attitude was bang on. And there was a lot of scrap and fight. And obviously they cut Sheffield United open so often. So I think it was a good mix of Portsmouth up in their game here, but also Sheffield United being very, very poor. It's just when those chances come, they need to punish opposition because unfortunately that can be the difference there. That can be the difference in games and therefore be the difference in what your outcome is at the end of the season.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that goes without saying, really, doesn't it? My concern would be, I've said on multiple occasions now this season that Portsmouth deserved more than they got in a game. So if that keeps happening, then I suppose that is a bit of a concern. Why does that happen? I don't really know. Do they just flatter to deceive? Do they look more dangerous than they actually have been in games? Or are they just bad? Is it just bad luck? I don't really know. But I do like Portsmouth. I think they play good football. They should have more points than they do in my book. And with that being said, as we sit here right now, just now, I think there'll be 3 poorer teams than them this season come May. Would you agree with that?
I mean, it's a good debate to have because Derby are in a position of recruiting a new manager at the moment, which could change things significantly. Because we all know the squad's better than their performances. Hull, if they sort out their home form, that could really change things. Luton have recruited extensively and got a new manager in as well. So there are so many variables here working against Portsmouth. And actually, maybe they could have been a little bit more active in January because they're asking a lot of new players coming in, or I say new players, a few of the new players that have come in from Australia, for example, you're asking a lot for them to come in and fight a relegation battle, but also, respond in a way that is, fighting relegation and getting used to a new style, new country, etc. It's difficult. So I think it's a lot closer to really judge than maybe it is just saying yes, 3 poorer teams in Portsmouth. Because I don't think that's the case. I really don't. I think it's so even down there. It's so hard to make a conclusion out of that.
Well, I'm not going to disagree with you on that. It's very difficult to say who's going down at this stage, isn't it? But from what I've seen of Portsmouth this season, I think John Mousinho's got a really good thing going there, and hopefully they stay up because I think that'll be a good thing for the Championship in general, Justin. An 89th minute equaliser from Dennis Sirkin saw Sunderland draw 2-2 with Watford. 3-word reviews for Sunderland. Collins says very poor performance. Wilkes says consistently inconsistent again. Yeah, a bit of a strange game, really, because Sunderland scored early on, and at that point, I thought they would go on to just get the job done. But then they were really poor until essentially the final few minutes of the game where they equalised, and then they missed 2 1-on-1s and probably should have won. So even though they did get an 89th minute equaliser, Justin, I think they'll be quite disappointed with this.
Yeah, definitely. I would be. I'd be seething, in fact. I think when you miss 1 1-on-1, especially after that Wilson Isidore goal against Borough last Monday, where he just comfortably takes it round Mark Travers in the Middlesbrough goal. You think he's got one of these in the bag, and obviously I think it was Alexis who had the other one. When you got 2 of those in the final sort of 10 minutes, obviously into added time, you miss them both. Yeah, it's such a kick in the teeth, but did Sunderland deserve the win in the grand scheme of things? I don't think on the balance of how they played, you could have said that Sunderland were miles ahead of Watford. Yes, they had those 2 big chances at the end, but like you said, they were poor for a large spell of this game, and actually took them until Watford probably scored their second for them to really come out and start to play. Which, you're running uphill with a parachute on your back when you're letting teams do that. So, you're frustrated from a Sunderland fan for a variety of reasons, not winning it at the end, but also not doing enough to win it in 90 minutes as well.
Yeah, considering how encouraging that Middlesbrough win was, I was expecting more from Sunderland here because, look, there were definitely shades of that Plymouth draw in this one, and I was making the point after that game about how Sunderland seemed to be suffering a bit of a dip. I got a bit of stick from Sunderland fans for saying that, but this looks like that was that again, because I don't know, there just seems to be a lot of players at Sunderland right now who are off it. Defensively, they've been shaky. I mean, earlier in the season, they were rock solid, and a great example of how shaky they were at the back was Dennis Sirkin giving away that daft penalty, which he definitely wouldn't have done before. Patrick Roberts has been poor for quite some time now. And Enzo Lefebvre, I keep banging this drum, get him in the middle. He's too good to be just shoved out on the wing. He's the kind of player you build your team around, not crowbar in. So I've got a few question marks about Sunderland right now. I thought they had turned that corner with that Middlesbrough win, but this looked like they've gone back around that corner, I guess. So disappointing for them. And even though they didn't play very well against Watford, it has to go down as a missed opportunity to keep the pressure on the other top 2 sides, or top 2 chasing sides, Justin, doesn't it?
Yeah, it is a missed opportunity. I still think it's extreme to consider them being in a dip, because results-wise, yes, they're still chipping away.
Justin, they've not been playing as well as they have been at certain points this season, have they?
No, but again, you're asking a young team to do a lot here. I think this was a poor performance. I don't think it's a dip, because they've had good performances over the last 5 or 6 weeks.
Right. Look at it like this, though. They've had, 3 bad performances in 4 games now? That's a dip.
I don't think they're bad performances. I think they've had poor moments. I think this was the worst performance out of the last 4 games.
They weren't great against Plymouth, though, were they?
They weren't. No, they weren't great. They weren't the usual selves. But again, I still think it's extreme to call it a dip, because still within those games, you go back to Burnley, you go back to the Plymouth, you go back to this game. They've had chances to win it. They've not taken them. So I don't think they're suffering a dip as a collective. I think they've got a couple of players in moments where they look really off it. Defensively, the balance is a little bit off. Maybe that's Enzo Lefay's introduction. I don't know. I'm just speculating there. But you look at the balance of the defence and the amount of goals they're conceding and chances they're starting to concede. That's the real concern. I don't think there's a dip in form because they're still good going forwards. I think the sheer amount of chances they are starting to leak a little bit. That's the problematic thing here. They need to get back to a very conservative approach that they had during sort of October, November time. I know they were drawing a lot of games, but again, that's more of an insight into what we know they're capable of, but what we know they're capable of when they do suffer quote unquote dip. So yeah, I still think it's extreme to suggest they're in a poor spell. I just think this was an off day. For a lot of the players. And as I say, they kicked up a gear as soon as Watford scored a second, and they could have won it. And we probably wouldn't be sat here, talking about how poor they were because, last minute winner. Oh, bells.
I think we will be talking about how poor they were because they were poor for so long in this game. And I've seen a lot of Sunderland this season, and at times I've been just taken aback by how good they've been. But so many players in this team don't look like they're at the same levels that they were at certain stages this season. Maybe they're just tired because it is a young team, Justin. You're absolutely right there to point that out. And maybe fatigue is just catching up with them because they're kind of a team who haven't had many injuries this season. They've had pretty much the same 11 in most games. They started to rotate a bit more recently, but it has been more or less the same 11 for the vast majority of the season. So maybe they are just fatigued. I don't know. But yeah, they're definitely not at the same level as they have been at certain stages this season. I think we can say that much for sure. One thing I will say, though, about Sunderland is sometimes you just have moments of brilliance go against you and there's not a whole lot you can do about it. And that was the case here with a beautiful goal from Imran Louser. It almost came out of nowhere, didn't it, Justin? I don't understand how he's managed to connect with it so well when he's essentially side-footed it from 30 yards out. It's an unbelievable goal.
Yeah, that's a really good way of summing the effort up from Imran Louser because it just looked like he was so nonchalant, wasn't it? It was so effortless, like he's just... I don't know. I'm trying to sort of... it was like, he's just threw in a paper aeroplane. There was no sort of connection with the ball worthy of that sort of trajectory. It was beautiful. Beautiful goal from a beautiful man with beautiful hair. Guided into the top corner with effortless precision. It was gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. He's been faultless since he came into the team, by the way. He's been brilliant since he was introduced into the team in November. So, yeah, when he's putting stuff off like that, can't really complain, can you? A good summary of what this individual can do because there was, how long ago was it now? A couple of years ago where he was being linked with big moves away. Yeah, really good player. Really, really good player.
Yeah, we've seen him do it on plenty of times ever since he's come back down to the Championship, and he's a terrific player and probably shouldn't be at Championship level, but when you see stuff like that, you just have to sit back and appreciate it. Whatever the case, a disappointing weekend for Sunderland, though. They're now 5 points of second place, Sheffield United. They've got Luton at home in midweek and then a gigantic game away at Leeds a week on Monday. So that is going to be absolutely huge, isn't it, Justin? Let's have a look back on how our picks did from the preview show, Justin, because our bet builder was on Sunderland v Watford and a £10 stake was due to return £80. We had over 3.5 cards. There were 6. So that cruised in. Ryan's card pick of the week, flying in once again. We also had both teams to score, which also came in. However, we did have Wilson Isidore to score any time and Sunderland to win, which didn't come in. I thought when Isidore was through on goal, 1-1 at the end, Justin. That was our moment. That's how close we were. It was so blooming annoying. Anyway, onto our multiple, where a £10 stake was due to return £135. We weren't so close on that one. We actually had a bit of a nightmare. We had Norwich, Sheffield United, Sunderland and Sheffield Wednesday all to win. Just the Sheffield United win in there. So, yeah. Not a great weekend for our multiple. It was always going to be difficult when it's just the 5 games. But yeah, not had much luck recently when it comes to the old multiple, have we? However, we'll be back with our next round of picks in this coming Friday's preview show, brought to you by SBK. Justin, we'll take a quick break. After that, we'll talk about a mad game at the Hawthorns and John Eustace potentially leaving Blackburn for Derby. Welcome back to the Second Tier podcast, and it's now time for us to reveal the winner of our latest edition of Jameson's Weekend Hero. Every single week, we ask you to nominate a fellow Championship fan that you believe deserves recognition. Now, it could be someone who drove you to a recent away day, or it could be a friend or relative who got you into supporting your club in the first place. Whatever it is, we want to find out. So to nominate your Jameson Weekend Hero from this weekend, send us a voice note right now on WhatsApp explaining your nomination. The number is in the show notes. And of course, if we pick you, you'll win a bottle of Jameson to share with your winner. But on to this weekend's hero. It's from Adam, who wanted to nominate his mate, Chris.
Hi guys, my name's Adam and I wanted to nominate my mate Chris for this week's Weekend Hero. We're both big Sheffield Wednesday fans and Chris is the best at sorting us out tickets for away games. We both live in London and we travelled to West Brom game yesterday. It was 12:30 kick-off, so an early start and a very early train out of Euston. And it was a great day out despite the result. Chris is the best at sorting us out with tickets, sorting out our travel, making sure we get to loads of great away games. Seeing Sheffield Wednesday play quite a few times with him, and it's always a fantastic time whether they win or not. So yeah, that's just why I wanted to nominate Chris. So cheers guys.
Oh, Justin, people like Chris deserve medals. They deserve all sorts, not just to be our weekend hero, because they are the people who have got to deal with all the, admin of sorting out the tickets. They are the real heroes here.
They absolutely are. You have no idea how hard it is sorting out away tickets as well. There are different levels of membership. You've got to be on the dot. It's like getting Oasis tickets for big games. Honestly, it's so hard. So Chris doing this job is oh my God, yeah, you cannot overstate the impact he's having. Unbelievable.
Travelling around the country as well from London to watch Wednesday. It's good stuff as well. I wonder if they go to home games, because that's a mighty effort every weekend, isn't it? But fair play to Chris. He is our Jameson Weekend Hero for this weekend. And just now going to raise a glass of Jameson Ginger and Lime to Chris and have a ceremonial swig to honour this great moment. Delicious. So there we go. Well done, Chris. And listeners, remember, we want you to step up and send us your Jameson Weekend Hero nominations right now on WhatsApp. All you have to do is send us a 1-minute message just summarising who you want to nominate, and you will be in with the chance of winning a bottle of Jameson. And it's up for grabs every single week. So it's your chance to not only tell us your favourite matchday stories, but also to give a great gift to your mum, your dad, your mates, your cousin, your uncle, anyone, whoever you go to the football with. So send us a voice note right now. The number is in the show notes, and you could be next week's winner. You must be over 18 to enter. UK only, and T's and C's apply. Let's get back on to some of the action then, Justin. There was a lot of action in this one. At the Hawthorns between West Brom and Sheffield Wednesday. Just speaking of Sheffield Wednesday, weren't we? 2 injury time goals for either side. A red card during a melee at the end. Ultimately, it finished 2-1 to West Brom. 3 reviews for West Brom. Lewis says, in your head. Jack says, in your head. Sharon says, in your head. Chris says, in your head. Yeah, we had several listeners send that in, that being in reference to West Brom's song about Jason Malumbi, who seemed to have rattled a few travelling supporters from Sheffield. But what a ridiculous game this was, Justin.
A proper championship game, wasn't it? It was beautiful. Oh, yeah. It was carnage. It was end to end. It was 2 teams going for the win. And that's why you've got to really appreciate not only Tony Mowbray ball, but also Danny Rule ball away from home as well. It's just utter carnage. That's what I was alluding to in the preview show. The sheer amount of goals they score late in games, and just, as I say, you just got to accept the chaos, embrace it. And I think I'll do that at West Brom as well. And this game was a beautiful epitome of both of these teams going for each other, literally at the end of the game as well. It was wonderful, wonderful stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really, really good game even before the injury time antics, wasn't it? Both teams had their fair share of good chances in the second half, and then the scenes when Jason Malumbi scored the winner were wild. Him running down the pitch, swinging his shirt around his head like he's blooming Ryan Giggs against Arsenal. And the Wednesday fans just despondent. It's great, Justin. This is what it's all about. You love to see it. And there's a great picture, actually, of Jason Malumbi celebrating in the background with his top off, and Tony Mowbray, a man who doesn't tend to show much emotion on the sideline, even he's celebrating a fair bit. It's good stuff. And then it all kicked off at the end, which resulted in Cal Bartley being sent off for an elbow, I think. I don't really know what you call that, Justin. What did you make of all that nonsense?
It was right. It was quite hard to understand what the source of the nonsense was. Obviously, Bartley, I think he was forearming Ingelsson in the neck, in the chest.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a bit harsh as a red card, but at least West Brom can come away from the game saying we beat them with 10 men. Just with an asterisk against it, but yeah, it just seemed like emotions spilled over a little bit. I think when, let's just put ourselves in the feet of both sets of players in the 90th minute. It's 1-0 West Brom, and then it's 1-1 Sheffield Wednesday, and then you get to the 99th minute, and then it's 2-1. You can imagine why there's a little bit of over exuberance maybe from West Brom, and maybe a little sour grapes from Wednesday. But yeah, just a wonderfully, I wouldn't say wonderfully capped, a great game of football, but it was carnage after carnage after carnage, and it finished with carnage, and that's all you can really ask for.
That's all we want. That's all we want. It was, as you say, Justin, your typical championship game. It was top class. And look, a great response by West Brom after that loss at Plymouth last time out. Jason Malumbi got a lot of love, as mentioned a second ago, with the in your head stuff. Adam Armstrong got a debut goal, had a few chances in this one as well, but his ability to just be in the right place at the right time will be huge for West Brom going forwards. I wanted to highlight Isaac Price as well, the young Northern Irish midfielder who they spent a fair bit of money on in January. This was his first start, and he looks like a really talented lad. So I was impressed with West Brom in this one. They look very sharp. Tony Mowbray probably would have preferred not to have had the injury time carnage, but it's a great 3 points for them, isn't it, Justin?
An important 3 points as well. I think, when we're talking about coming off the back of a away defeat to Plymouth last weekend, it was frustrating. It's disappointing because, I felt they were in control of that game. And they let it go. And I think, this win in the manner of the way they won the game, I think it was fairly even in terms of the chances. So I think a draw would have been a fair result, but the character to keep going and bounce back and react after conceding so late, I think just it beautifully sums up what Tony Mowbray wants out of his players. He wants them to go for wins. He wants them to go for 3 points. I think in my head, I would have been quite happy, if I'm a supporter in that position or even a player, I'm like, okay, well, we take a draw, we take it on the chin and we go again next week. But they go and they get that win. It's a fantastic summary of where that attitude's taken them. I think it's just a case of trying to repeat that into those away games. But an important win keeps them in the playoffs and gets that momentum starting to trickle a little bit, which is needed.
So West Brom up to 5th with this win. They've got a 3-point cushion in the playoffs now as well, which is big considering how tight it is in the top half of the table. They've got Blackburn at home on Wednesday, who of course could be managerless at that point. We'll talk about that shortly. A frustrating one for Sheffield Wednesday, though, Justin. They've got a bit of a reputation as the comeback kings of the division and look like they pulled off another one here. So they'll be disappointed to concede after doing all the hard work to get the equaliser. But they have been in the news in the past 24 hours, Justin, because former Wigan owner Talal Al-Hamad is reportedly interested in taking over Sheffield Wednesday. He took over the Latics when they were in administration. He owned them for just a couple of years, but in the time he was there, they suffered a points deduction after failing to pay players on time on multiple occasions. And Justin, I know Wednesday fans are desperate to get rid of Chansiri, but this guy is not the answer, is he?
Oh, no, he took Wigan onto the brink of collapse. I think if anyone wants to sort of a nice summary of where that story went under Al-Hamad at Wigan, he failed to pay the wages 4 times in 10 months, which is just astonishing level of bad ownership. So I think the way you can really sort of get to the bottom of this is Chansiri is a bad owner. He's incredibly volatile and he's difficult to work with and interpret what he's going to do next. But at least he pays the bills. I think that's the minimum requirement. He pays the bills.
Sometimes we'll make that clear.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Most of the time, he pays the bills. So I'd hope that the EFL, if this does go anywhere, I don't think it is because I think it might be Simon Jordan says it quite often. The chances usually circle around quite often. Clubs that are in need of a new owner, and Talal Al-Hamad comes across and has actually, his behaviour and his ability to actually run a club does come across as a chancer. I'd hope that the EFL would sniff this one out very quickly if it does progress anywhere.
Yeah, I'm not sure it will do because Chansiri's made it He says that he would happily sell the club, but it seems like, for all intents and purposes, that he doesn't want to sell the club. So it seems unlikely that this would happen. But on Alamad, one of the worst examples of club ownership I think I've ever seen in the time that we've been doing this podcast, Justin, was Wigan under him, because it was a complete and utter shambles, as you mentioned, failing to pay players on time. And then probably the worst bit about it was apologising and saying it won't happen again for it to then happen again the following month. It was just ridiculous. And I mean, that should be enough of a red flag in itself, but that's before you even get onto things like appointing Kolo Toure, who failed to win a single game before getting sacked. So going from Chansiri to him would properly be like going from the frying pan into the fire. So I don't think it would happen anyway, because of the reasons you mentioned there, Justin. Surely he wouldn't pass the fit and proper test. But still, a timely warning that, well, Chansiri is a bad football owner, believe it or not. Things could be worse. Let's go to Derby County, Justin, who have halted their losing run by getting a 1-1 draw away at Norwich in their first game since sacking Paul Warne. 3-word reviews for Derby. Mark says, Warne ball finally gone. James on our Patreon says, finally got a point. And Derby equalised in the 91st minute through a Jerry Yates penalty. Was that a penalty for you, first of all, Justin?
I think it was. I think it's soft, but the foot is raised. He does make contact. It's Jack Stacey, isn't it? He does make contact with Marcus Harness's head, which I think left Harness needing stitches. Well, it left him bleeding anyway, because he had a fair bit of treatment. So I think, in the laws of the game, it's deemed, unfortunately, dangerous play, despite it not being a proper boot to the head. It was a graze, but your foot's high, you're asking questions.
Yeah, and doing that in the 91st minute. An experienced player like Jack Stacey should know better, but yeah, it was a really bad moment for him. And ultimately, it cost Norwich in this one. Just a rush of blood to the head, that's all it takes sometimes, isn't it? And Derby were happy with that decision, of course, but they wouldn't have been happy with a disallowed goal in the first half, would they? Because Lars Jørgen Salverson was deemed to be offside when a cross was played into him. He put it into the back of net, flag went up. But it shouldn't have gone up, should it, Justin?
No, it's onside. It's onside. Several angles have seen now. Salverson looks very onside. So Derby can count themselves and looking at the linesman. You know, looking at the stills, he's slightly behind play, and I think his view, I think it's Callum Fisher at right back. His view of Fisher would have been skewed by the two defenders that Salverson is in front of. But Fisher's the one playing Salverson onside. So I have a little bit of sympathy
behind the ball
with
anyway, Justin, so...
Again,
even then,
he's behind the ball. He's level with it. I think that's harder to determine, especially when you're running down the line trying to see and you're behind the play already. But if you're going on the very basics of this decision, he was in an onside position wherever the ball was going to be played. So yeah, it's frustrating. Obviously, we go back to that reverse victory at Pride Park where Derby were on the other end of some honking decisions from a linesman then. I'd be very disappointed. I am disappointed. I am a Derby fan. I am disappointed. It's frustrating. But like I said, VAR, baby.
Yeah. Don't open that can of worms. But yeah, despite the decision, a great point for Derby. 8 losses on the bounce heading into this. Norwich have been excellent recently. So yeah, great point for them. It was very clear from the way that they played that they were happy to get a point. And who can blame them in the circumstances? So yeah, great result for Derby, particularly with the turmoil of the previous 24 hours heading into this, Justin.
Yeah, it's been a whirlwind for everyone. I think the first thing you do have to say is Paul Warne does come out of the situation coming very well. He's a great human being, just on a football manager level, and this is where we really want to assess him. It's just not quite up to scratch at championship level. And unfortunately, he's paid the price of that. And I think that last minute goal, the goal in stoppage time, despite it being a penalty, I think the Derby fans needed it. They deserved it as well. Been through a hell of a lot over the past few weeks. Performances haven't been there. And that was a performance where the away point was justified because for large spells of the game, they nullified Norwich. And then Norwich controlled the game, but they didn't create a hell of a lot. And the one time they did get behind Derby, Josh Sargent put the ball in the back of the net. So I think, they come away from that. It's a great point. That's why the fans were jubilant at the end. And I've seen a lot of people taking the piss out of the celebrations. But when you've lost 8 games in a row, you're going to celebrate like you've just won the Champions League. It feels good not to lose again. So yeah, great point. And hopefully Derby heading in the right direction.
Particularly with Derby's honking away record as well. So yeah, loads of positives to take from it really. And even though they lost the manager 24 hours before going somewhere like Norwich. That's far from ideal. They defended brilliantly here, and in fairness, even though we were big critics of Paul Warne, this team knew how to defend under him, didn't they? And that was by and large the case here, except for that one moment where Norwich scored, obviously, but points have been few and far between on the road for them all season, so they'll be delighted with this result. And we wait with bated breath to see who Derby get in to replace Paul Warne. But Justin, the Telegraph is reporting they've triggered the compensation clause in John Eustace's Blackburn contract, and they're set to hold talks. He was asked about those links after their game in the FA Cup this weekend, and he said, I've just come off the pitch. I've heard rumours that there's been an official approach, so that's something I'll have to discuss with the owner. I've been linked with other teams as well throughout the season, so we'll just have to wait and see. It just shows that the group of players have been excellent, all season. They're an absolute pleasure to work with. But yeah, John Eustace going from Blackburn to Derby. That would be an astonishing turn of events, wouldn't it, Justin? A manager going from a team challenging for the playoffs to a team in the bottom three. When I initially saw these links, I thought there's no chance that happens, but it seems like it may have legs.
I don't think anyone would have foreseen these links. I think firstly, Derby paying compensation for a manager, that surprises me a little bit. But then again, you've got someone with the quality that Eustace is. His compensation is rumoured to be around 500 to 750,000, according to reports. Okay, is that expensive in the grand schemes of a manager? I don't think it is. That's definitely doable. But yeah, I mean, the step down's the big one here. The step down from being a playoff chasing team to the bottom three. A team like Derby who have looked comfortably one of the worst three teams in this division. It's an almighty risk if Eustace does decide to take the job. And I do feel for Blackburn because I think there are circumstances that are above him that are probably turning him away from Rovers. The only situation is frustrating for Eustace. I've seen a lot of people saying that the relationship there has deteriorated a little bit, and obviously with the lack of investment that we've seen in the club over the past couple of seasons, you can sort of understand why his head might be turned. So, yeah. It's a huge step down, but I think in terms of club and where they're going, I think Derby heading in one direction with an owner and an ambition, whereas Blackburn probably have stayed around the same level in that sense of that. Yeah, it's a strange one.
Yeah, I can't recall any managers really doing anything like this before. It's a very unique situation. The only example I can ironically think of is Paul Warne to Derby, because he left Rotherham in the Championship to go to Derby when they were in League One, didn't he? But yeah, it would be an amazing move in many different ways. We were saying in our reaction show how there aren't many outstanding managers available. So it's either that or they go for someone at another club. I never thought this would happen though, because John Eustace has been one of the managers of the year for my money. Many were expecting Blackburn to be fighting to stay up, yet he has them competing for a playoff place. He's done an incredible job, but he really is almost dragging Blackburn along, really, isn't he? Because the current owners aren't the most visible and they've got legal matters they're constantly having to deal with abroad. So it would say a lot about the project, if you will, at Blackburn, if Eustace were to leave and go to a side fighting to stay up. So, yeah, a remarkable turn of events. With that being said, it will be fascinating to see whether this does go through, and it would be a seriously impressive move by Derby if it does happen, because a big statement for them, a huge blow for Blackburn.
Yeah, a huge blow for Blackburn. I really do feel for Blackburn fans as well, because I think what John Eustace has done and the work that he's done is really mask over some of the wider issues at the club that I'm sure will come to surface if Eustace does make the move, because I'm sure if the project was there, it was clearer at Ewood Park, then the enticement to stay would definitely be there, and those rumours would be quashed. But you look at his statement that he read out. It's not exactly killing the rumour, is it? It's so. I imagine from a Blackburn fan's perspective, it's just like, well, what are we doing? What are we doing? We're not selling the club. We're not invested in the club. We've got a manager here who is, a very, very good thing to happen to us. And he's slipping through our fingers because we're rudderless, we're sailless, we're not going in any direction. So, yeah, the frustration I imagine that they're going to feel, especially when you look at Derby in the table, it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt a lot. So, there's a lot of sympathy for the fans because, as I say, the issues extend way past John Eustace. There's got to be a lot of direction and a lot of communication from the club to come out if Eustace does make the move.
Well, it's interesting that it seems to be moving very quickly, this move. So it'll be interesting to see when it gets wrapped up. But Derby have a massive game on Tuesday night at home to Oxford United. So that may be John Eustace's first game. We'll wait and see. And the final game we've had this weekend, Justin, was the game on Sunday afternoon in the We Both Hate Cardiff derby. A very out-of-form Swansea got a 1-0 win at Bristol City. 3-word review for Swansea. Lucio says, expect the unexpected. Never had any doubt, Justin. What's that? I was struggling to justify picking them in the preview show. It was always nailed on, mate.
Have a word. Literally, we got to a point where it's like, well, I had no other game to pick. I had to pick Swansea. Yeah, full credit to them. They get a clean sheet. And for large spells, I thought they looked really, really good as well. They played really well on the counter in this game. And they seized a moment of poor concentration from Bristol City. I think it's Mark Sykes who was completely unaware Josh Tymon had ran in behind him. And that's where the goals come from there. But I think if you're looking at a team on the balance of play who looked the better and more threatening, it was Swansea in this. I think Bristol City created a fair bit from set pieces, but that was it. It really carved Swansea open. Whereas Swansea, as I say, on the counter were good. And Lewis O'Brien, again, by the way, we talked about how important a signing that is. He looked brilliant here. He looked really, really good. And it really could be a turning point for Swansea. But yeah, fucking hell. What about this?
That's what I was saying. Lewis O'Brien did have a cracking game. I was very encouraged by that performance. He looked like Lewis O'Brien of old, didn't he?
Yeah.
I agree with most of what you say there, Justin. Swansea probably were the better team over the 90 minutes, but it was only really in the second half where they kicked up a gear, because I was a bit fearful in the first half when there was a stat which popped up on Sky showing Swansea only completed 2 passes in Bristol City's final third in the first 27 minutes. And you had Lawrence Vigouroux, who was properly keeping them in that game with 2 pretty astonishing saves. But then Swansea just grew into the game, and I think they were almost buoyed by the Swansea fans who were well up for this one, and they were the better team in the second half, probably deserved the 3 points on that second half showing alone. And the relief on Luke Williams' face at the end after 6 losses in 7 for him to get this big win, it was great stuff seeing him happy for a change, Justin.
Well, it's a relief, isn't it? They've had a bad transfer window, and it's come off the back of the West Brom links, and, in amongst all this poor form as well. They lost to Cardiff. So if you talk about, the festive period, ever since then, you probably could have made the argument that Luke Williams could potentially lose his job. I'd have been surprised if that was the case, but you look at the form and the mood at the club, you just wouldn't have been surprised. And I think, the celebrations and the relief he feels at the end is that really shows how poor they have been, because they looked at one point where they could have been sniffing at the playoffs, and now you go back to sort of last week, we were talking about them possibly getting sucked into a relegation battle. That's how bad the last 6 weeks has been. You've gone from promotion aspiration to holy shit, we're in the shit. So it's been that sort of period for Swansea. So yeah, be interesting to see if they can build on it. But you've got to really praise Luke Williams for putting up with what he's had to put up with, because he's been through it.
Yeah, he has been, and it's done a lot to ease the pressure on him, because there have been plenty of calls recently from supporters for him to go, even though we never agree with that, Justin. But if they did suffer another loss, then maybe time was running out for him. And he has spoken this week about how frustrated he's been with Swansea's January window. So that relief at the end, I think, will just be such a huge, huge thing for him. And hopefully, going forwards, they can build upon it and get back on track, because to say they've been off track recently has been a bit of an understatement, hasn't it? Just it's time for us to do the polls, the part of the show where we give the listeners 3 questions on Twitter. Just want to get their thoughts on everything to do with the Championship. So the first question we asked was this: who would you rather manage, Blackburn Rovers or Derby County?
So you're asking the Derby fan. Blackburn.
Yeah, I think I'd be Blackburn, but it says a lot about how John Eustace...
Max Targay, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, that's why you want to go there. But it says a lot about how much John Eustace has fallen out with the owners that we're in this situation, doesn't it? 66% of people said Blackburn, 34% said Derby. Who was the best signing of the January window in the Championship? Adam Armstrong to West Brom, Louis Barry to Hull, Marcus Edwards to Burnley, Enzo Lafay to Sunderland.
Ooh, I mean, Marcus Edwards did score for Burnley in the FA Cup. against Southampton. So he could be, but I'm not convinced yet. I'm going to go Enzo Lefebvre because I think he's a game changer.
I will go for Enzo Lefebvre as well, but I think Adam Armstrong to West Brom. One that ticks a lot of boxes for me. 40% of people said Enzo Lefebvre, 34% said Adam Armstrong, 18% said Marcus Edwards, 8% said Louis Barry. And finally, Justin, do you like rugby? Yes or no?
Finally, this question's come up. I don't think we've ever asked it. I fucking hate rugby. I fucking hate rugby. Oh, I hate it so much. I hate it being on TV. I hate the drinking culture around it. I hate going to my local park and all the parents on a Sunday morning taking up all the car parking spaces for their children to play rugby. Just get lost.
Okay.
Hate it.
Wow, fine. I didn't realise this was such a deep issue for you. I don't like rugby because when I was in the pub yesterday, every TV was taken up with the rugby when I was like, I just want to watch Birmingham Newcastle, please.
Oh, and that was a good game, by the way.
That was a good game. So we did watch it in the end, but there was about 20 TVs in this pub and they only had one which had the Birmingham game, which was bloody annoying. Anyway, 65% of people said no, they don't like rugby. 35% said yes, each to their own. But there we go, ladies and gents. Those have been the polls, and this has been the Second Tier Podcast. But if you are a Patreon subscriber, don't go anywhere. We've got the extended edition of the weekend show coming up, which we like to call Zamora Time. We'll be answering your questions from our Martin Patronsons, including, would you rather be a Burnley, Sheffield United or Sunderland fan right now? And do we think Leeds will stay up if they get promoted this season? If you're not a Patreon subscriber, sign up to get Zamora Time in every single weekend show. Head over to patreon.com/second tier. Link is in the description of this episode. But it's just about time for us here on the Second Tier Podcast. We'll be back again on Thursday to talk about all the midweek action across the Champo. So we look forward to seeing you again for that. But this has been the Second Tier Podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.